Well, house guest, huh? And who might you be? No, now, don't tell me. Let's see, you're traveling in disguise. No, that's not right. You're going on a visit. No, I'm wrong. That's, by the way, you're running away.
How did you guess?
Professor Marvel never guesses. He knows. Now, why are you running away? No, don't tell me. They don't understand you at home. They don't appreciate you. You want to see other lands, big cities, big mountains, big oceans.
Why, it's just like you could read what was inside of me.
Yeah.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhood Podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters, Yellow Brick Road Walkers, and Skywriting Broom Riders. This is Ruined Childhoods, and we are happily landlocked in our cinematic journey across America, celebrating cult and classic cinema and imagining new paths for their ongoing legacies. On the last episode, we quit smoking in Iowa, and this time we are traveling over rainbows into the Sunflower State, originally the home of the Kanza, Osage, Pawnee, Kiowa, and Comanche. This state is now home to the Eisenhower Presidential Library, the Cosmosphere Space Museum, and the Evel Knievel Museum. It's also where Russell Hammond left Stillwater, took acid, and became a golden god and almost famous. But what this state is most known for today is its place in history as the birthplace of Paul Rudd and the black and white setting for this episode's film, the 1939 classic The Wizard of Oz. A few things to note right away. We expect that you've seen this movie already. Dan and I are brothers, and this is our mother's favorite movie, so we've seen it each probably 1,000 times. Also, Dan played the Cowardly Lion in a 1991 junior high run of The Wizard of Oz. Dan, did you channel Bert Lahr or bring your own spin to the character of the Cowardly Lion?
Channeling Bert Lahr would be a nice way of saying doing an impersonation of Bert Lahr.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
do you have music playing? Do you have music playing over there?
Of course, I started Dark Side of the Moon as you finished saying Greetings Starfighters. So yeah. Now, of course, on the VHS, you have to start it at the beginning of Greetings Starfighters. But for the podcast version, you start Dark Side of the Moon at the S, and then, of course, we should have been talking about the part where she's running when they say "Run, Rabbit, Run." But oh well, it works. Works maybe 2 times out of 10.
You know, I've never done it. I don't know. It's never really occurred to me to even want to try it.
I made, like, I remember back in the day, I made a couple of, like, I don't want to say half-hearted attempts, but like one of those, let's try. This was back in my mid to late 20s. So, yeah, right. a lot of time and resources, etc., to do such things. But yeah, it was kind of like, if you're looking for, if you started, it's kind of like, yeah, if you press play on the CD on the third Lion's Roar, that's if you're using the DVD, then there are a couple of things that are like, oh, well, that's weird, or that's funny, or that sound in the music goes along with that. But it's like, it, I am no scholar on Pink Floyd, but I think this is entirely coincidence that a few things on Dark Side of the Moon happen to sync up.
Oh,
it's a
absolutely. They have even claimed themselves there's nothing ever intentional, and the person who, you know, makes these claims is, you know, grasping at straws.
Like, there's a couple of things, like when she's walking along like the fence in the pigsty, that there's like trying to a lyric about like trying to keep your balance on the beam, something like that. I don't know. I like I said, have not listened to. I've listened to Dark Side of the Moon a lot, but it's always just like background kind of when I have it on. So I've never really paid that much attention to. But anyway, I don't know. I was just like, oh, it'd be a fun way to start is to pay tribute and acknowledge that, and then probably not talk about that for the rest of the episode.
Done deal. Let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about your portrayal of the Cowardly Lion. Do you remember much about that? I feel
Yes.
like I have memories of like of not so much watching the performance, but like seeing I don't know, like after the performance, you all coming out and oh, do you literally have your Courage Award?
I literally have
Your medal?
Yes, and I'll post a picture on Instagram at Ruined Childhoods Pod. But I have with me the Courage medal that was placed around my neck at the end of the show, and the red ribbon and everything. Like, still, I don't know. And it handwritten Courage. I still have this. I also still have, and it's around here somewhere. And I didn't think about it until just now, but one of the things I was given, so The Wizard of Oz was the first show I did. And for those of you who don't know, I studied theater in college. I did theater all throughout high school and, worked in theater and worked as an actor for, about 10 years after graduating college. Mm-hmm. So this was the first show I was ever in, was The Wizard of Oz. This was the first role I ever played, really.
Yeah.
And it was, of course, aside from the fact that it is our mother's favorite movie, it was really meaningful in that regard. And there are so many things that I remember very clearly about it. And so I'll share some memories. Yeah. So anyway, definitely channeled / impersonated Bert Lahr. And
you could put down the Courage medal, by the way. You don't need to.
You know what? I'm just.
You could put it on.
It doesn't fit around the headphones there. So the Courage. What I also have is and one of the gifts that I was given by either our parents or different family friends who came to see the show was a plastic yellow brick road street sign.
Okay.
And I had it in the hallway leading to my office where I do the podcast. And but we had some work done after we had a flood. In fact, last year, just about almost exactly a year ago, we're recording this on December 26th. Our flood happened on December 24th. So there. Yes. But I remember very clearly. So first of all, this was a middle school production with what I remember being high production value. Like the great and powerful Oz, like the giant Oz head. I remember that being really impressive. Now I do have the video. I converted the VHS to DVD. Whoa, so I do have it. I have not gone back and watched it. I probably will soon with the kids, my kids to be particular, not just any kids, but it was, so I remembered having high and like dry ice. I remember it was my first experience with dry ice.
Oh,
to of course create the mysterious fog effects. We also used a trained show dog as Toto.
Did you really?
So yes, a middle school show where
for a junior high performance, that's kind of
now
impressive.
This was in a K-8 school where you could have just gotten like a well-behaved, charismatic like kindergartner or first grader, and put them in the your daughter I would cast immediately as Toto would be an incredible Toto.
Oh, geez.
Character out the wazoo.
I don't know about that one.
Possibly would steal too many scenes. Yes. But
hard to
yes,
say.
But so we used a train, and the dog's name was Mighty Mo Hildy. I only pour one out because this is like 1991.
Oh, this was 1991.
Yeah. But yeah, Mighty Mo Hildy was the dog's name. I don't remember the trainer's name, but I remember that like we had the dog, and with the dog was with us, And I remember that there was this
Yeah.
one scene where we exited. Man, I remember this so clearly. I remember we had to exit off stage right, and we had another entry. We being myself, the Tin Man, Scarecrow, and Dorothy.
Sure.
Just to be clear. So, and it was a really quick transition. We had to run. And I remember at one time, my friend Jose Luis Riera, who played the Tin Man,
Okay.
had the leash for the dog, and we're running through the hallway. Now the hallway is, of course, like tile. And I remember looking around, and the dog was just like water skiing, basically. And Mighty Mo Hildy was just like not even running, just water skiing is the most
Just
by
gliding.
far. Yes, just gliding around. And it was like as we were rounding a corner, and I remember seeing the dog just whoo around, and
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
made it safely. Of course, this wasn't like one of those things where the dog didn't clear the corner and smacked into a row
Right.
of lockers. No, and no
Yeah.
animals were harmed. So I
Right.
remember that. I remember doing. I remember that it was also my first experience on the morning announcements, and as
Ooh.
a somewhat of a performer, I always
A ham.
enjoyed participating in the morning announcements in high school when it was time to promote a show. And we did a scene. I
Right.
remember we did a scene on the morning announcements. Now, I was not a popular kid. And middle school is awkward for everybody. Like middle school hit me
True,
hard.
yeah.
Like, some people had COVID and it felt like a little cold. And some people were like knocked out with like the worst flu they ever had for 2 weeks. I was that end of middle school. I was bad COVID middle school. And like just everything. You look at photographs, and I had a like barely half-assed mulletish type haircut, and I was like fat, but not like fun fat. It wasn't well distributed, and I just I have a picture of myself, and it was from when I met Alan King, and this was 7th grade. So this was like this was the height. This was the worst. This was like the worst day of the bad COVID was 7th grade, all of 7th grade. And I met Alan King, and in this picture, it's so humiliating and hilarious. I look like, with all due respect, there is no better way I can put this, I look like a middle-aged lesbian.
Okay.
It's the hair named Sue.
Okay.
Named like I've got the hair. The shirt I'm wearing in it looks like this big, like this blouse.
Well, 1991.
This was 1990.
Fashion was 1990. Okay.
Yeah. So
Still,
no.
but
It
still,
was.
but still,
I mean, no.
yeah.
It was the world was in middle school, but middle school terrible.
Yeah.
But I did the morning announcements, and we did a scene. And first of all, when I came on with my first, because we did the scene where they meet the Cowardly Lion, and that's a strong entrance with the run. Come on, put up your dukes, and fight.
Burt Lahr, everybody.
And I did it way too loud, but it was, I think, the first time that my personality kind of came out, and there were kids who hadn't previously ever really had much to say to me that did. It was a really cool it was really cool. So that was that was a really meaningful part of doing it. And then just something just funny that I think about that I associate with the show, and then we'll move on from the Dan nostalgia segment of the show, is where we did the show it was February 1991. What was also happening at that time was the Gulf War.
I was gonna say Desert Storm.
Operation Desert Storm was happening.
Yeah.
So during our curtain call, I don't know who made the decision, but felt it would be would be good to say something and, express our appreciation to the brave people of the military who were overseas, and we wished for their safe return. And my dear, dear friend, Stephanie Carmel, I love you, Stephanie, was the one who said it. And I think meaning to use a very mature adult word that would fit the situation, said condolences. And said, we want to send our condolences out to the...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't until like years later watching the tape. I mean, not that many years later, because I was watching the tape.
Right.
That it was like, oh no, condolences was not the right word to say there. It was heartfelt. It was heartfelt.
I'm sure. Yeah. I thought that you were going to say that, like, I don't know if the play had the scene where the trees like come to, or the trees are alive, that the apples are being picked up.
Yes.
If there was like a yellow ribbon tied around
there
one.
was. Yes. Holy
No, there
shit.
wasn't.
I will confirm this.
No way.
I might be able to confirm this while we are recording. I'm
to our I guess younger millennial and Gen Z listeners, if you are out there, this was something that happened at the time to show support for the troops. People out of symbolically tied yellow ribbons around trees, and
this was not a new thing.
That was
not a new thing.
But I remember specifically, and I don't remember seeing it during anything since then, really. Yeah, I think that it kind of like that was where it peaked, and then it was just like
it went out. I have to say the tie yellow, and I don't know if it peaked, because tie yellow ribbon around that old oak tree was a hit song for Tony Orlando and Dawn back in the 70s.
I just remember at that time it was. It was a marker of the era.
It was a thing.
It was a big thing.
It was so right. Yeah, right. This was what you did, and it wasn't like it wasn't something. I wouldn't call it a fad. Like I was about to compare it to like, it was like the ice bucket challenge. No, it wasn't. It was a thing that we were like, hey, like people are like our service people are overseas, and we don't know what they, what they're going to face. Like at a certain point, it was just, there's the deadline that George H.W. Bush gave to Saddam Hussein, like 30 days to withdraw the troops. To withdraw from Kuwait, and then he didn't withdraw from Kuwait. So yeah. So to bring it back, tie a yellow ribbon. I don't remember how the song goes, but look it up. It's a wonderful, wonderful mid tune that only could have happened then. But yeah, I don't remember when it started. I don't remember if it was a Vietnam thing, tying a yellow ribbon, but I am pretty sure that there was a yellow ribbon tied around one of the trees in that scene, John, and bless you for bringing it up and thinking of that, because now that you mention it, I'm remembering it. I could be remembering it wrong, but as I've said, a lot of my memories.
Let's just say it happened. Just say it.
My memories of this show are much clearer than my memories of yesterday, and I've not been
right.
Yeah. I've been lucid and sober.
Well, why don't we just do a little synopsis just in case anybody needs a refresher? I'm working under the assumption that everybody knows the plot, but here we go. A young girl named Dorothy is knocked unconscious during an unusually disastrous tornado on her family's farm in Kansas. She wakes up to discover that the tornado displaced her house and deposited it in a strange land called Oz. Fortunately for the residents of Oz's Munchkin Land district, Dorothy's house landed on one of their most fierce opponents, the Wicked Witch of the East. Unfortunately for Dorothy, the Wicked Witch of the East's sister, the Wicked Witch of the West, is pissed off, mostly because Dorothy now possesses her sister's prized ruby slippers that contain magical powers, thanks to Glinda, the Good Witch, who has also provided Dorothy with protection. Dorothy is informed that if she wants to find her way home, she should meet with the Wizard of Oz all the way on the other side of the Yellow Brick Road in Emerald City. On her way, she collects 3 friends also in need of the wizard's help: a brainless scarecrow, a heartless tin man, and a cowardly lion. But the Wicked Witch of the West is determined to get in Dorothy's way along their journey. And now I will just give you the cast list because famously Judy Garland plays Dorothy. We have Frank Morgan as the Wizard of Oz and also Professor Marvel at the beginning and the end. Ray Bolger as the Scarecrow and Hunk. Burt Lahr as the Cowardly Lion and Zeke. And Jack Haley as the Tin Man and Hickory. We have Billy Burke as Glinda the Good Witch. Margaret Hamilton brilliantly as the Wicked Witch of the West. And Elmira Gulch. We have Charlie Grapewin as Uncle Henry, Clara Blandick as Auntie M, and Terry as Toto, and not Mighty something Hildy. What was it?
Mighty Mo Hildy.
Mighty
Mo Hildy.
Mighty Mo Hildy. I got close. But yeah, Dan, do you recall? I mean, for us to recall the first time we saw The Wizard of Oz would be impossible. It was essentially, blasted onto the womb while we were in there cooking.
I was going to say, I feel like I was born with the knowledge of The Wizard of Oz. Like it was familiar to me the first time I saw it.
I feel like, and it's hard to say for sure, but I feel like even though our mother collected Wizard of Oz paraphernalia over the years, certainly she had some things as we were, young children. I mean, certainly we wouldn't have yet had VHS tapes, or any, I don't know, maybe.
We did have a VHS player, I believe, by the time you were born in 1983.
That's the year I was born.
I believe we got a VHS player like somewhere around there, but I don't remember having the Wizard of Oz.
Maybe the hospital was giving them away free for every child born. It was like, thank you for your thank you for joining us here at this hospital. I hope you enjoyed your stay. Here's your bill. And because you ordered the deluxe suite, you get this free VCR.
Which at that time would have been about twice the size of the baby.
Absolutely. And 20 times the weight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our old VCR, I had it for a long time. I remember bringing it to college with me.
Thing was a beast.
That's what my friends called it, the first VCR.
Rightfully so. It was old.
But it lasted. That thing lasted. And that went through a lot of torture, toys being jammed into it.
Well, we talked about this particular VCR on the last Starfighter episode, because this VCR is the reason why we became such big fans of The Last Starfighter, seeing as how the tape that we had rented from the video store got stuck in it, probably because there was a toy jammed in there. And that after the VCR was then repaired, our father had to purchase the tape from the video store because we thought that it was toast. But then we had it, and he made us watch it.
Well, we played it enough times that the tape straightened out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I can only imagine. So Wizard of Oz has been famously replayed on TV. I forget which network. I think CBS would do it annually on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and I feel like TNT and TBS, once those became a thing, would regularly show it. USA, it was just a standard. What are we going to program? I don't know. The Wizard of Oz? Sure.
I mean, Turner, it was one of the movies that was synonymous with Turner and the Turner Library, though.
That's true.
I remember the controversy over Ted Turner colorizing black and white movies, and you can't do that here.
Nope. This one is absolutely safe from getting that treatment. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's so common, and I don't know. I'd be curious to know now if as many people growing up are just exposed to it, and like how broad, like how diverse a cross section of the population, like how many boundary lines does this movie
Well,
cross?
okay, so it comes out in 1939, and that was, it was before our mother was born, but not too long before she was born. And
10 years.
10 years, I didn't want to out her age or anything like that, but here we are. And
Be proud. Be proud of that age. Lasting.
and yeah, and I think that for people of that generation, the baby boomers, there weren't as many movies at the time. So when there's going to be something that and that was certainly a groundbreaking movie, and of course it kind of caught fire the way that it did. And I think that for that generation to kind of cherish that movie as being like such a big moment for them culturally, having experienced that kind of in the early days of cinema of its kind, I'll say. And, bringing that to the next generation is a big thing. And of course, there are people who are, Gen X or millennials who certainly have great fondness for the movie, but not in the same way. There are definitely, it's like devout super fans. That's absolutely true. But I don't know if the percentage is as high among the generations as it would have been for the baby boomers.
Well, and to your point about there not being as many movies, or just in general, not the entertainment options that we have today, this movie would have been shown in theaters a lot longer, and
for years.
It would have been, I'm sure, and I mean, yes, and it has been brought back as recently, probably I want to say is 2019, because that would have been an anniversary, like what, 80 years.
Oh, you mean just anniversary wise, right? Yeah.
So
sure.
I mean, so I can imagine that, especially at that time when you don't have all like movies being made by everyone, like coming out everywhere, and you really just had, and also movies that were shown on TV, and
Yeah.
I don't have the date, the year in front of me of when Wizard of Oz started to be shown on TV, but I imagine in the 1950s.
1956.
Yeah, 1956. So which because that's when people really started to buy TVs, and when you started to see TVs in the homes. This is as the baby boomers are being born and are coming of age. And of course, for parents, like the TVs at that time, when they're not like, oh, well, 2 hours of TV a week max for children under 8.
Yeah.
Like, no, it was oh my
babysitter.
God, my devil child is calm all of a sudden, and they stay in one place. And my goodness, what is this wondrous invention? So it was, of course, if Wizard of Oz is shown and watched time and time again, aside from the fact that it is a legitimately fabulous movie that holds up.
I watched it again the other day, and not that I needed to. And first of all, I was expecting to be more bored than I actually was. I mean, not that I needed to be paying attention the entire time, because I know that movie so well by now. But there are also just so many great visual effects that, to this day, I mean, I don't know if you could get away with a lot of those unless it was like a specific decision that goes within the themes of the movie. But like, especially for that time, some of the visual effects are just stunning and really cool looking. And I don't know, you have to admire the ingenuity of the time for how that was handled. And I was so surprised that it didn't win an Academy Award for visual effects, which that went to Gone with the Wind, also directed by Victor Fleming.
Like you said, there weren't that many movies.
Well, this year, okay.
well-
you know, I was texting with you the other day, and we were talking about, current movies, and I was just saying, like, 2023 has been a really good movie year. Like, it's been there's some really incredible films that came out this past year. And if you look at 1939, yes, there aren't as many movies, but that's when you've got The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Goodbye, Mr. Chips. Like,
Right.
there's some classics in there. And I don't know if 1938 even, like, really came close to that, or even 1940.
No, 39 is one of those. If you look at those years ending in 9, and I'm saying this not really thinking about whether this holds up until 1989, which is a movie that I'm that I am particularly fond of, but also 1999, it is, I would say, one of the highest quality movie years. So, but 1939, yeah. But so Gone with the Wind wins best visual effects. Interesting.
I believe so. Gone with the Wind Academy Awards.
I guess for covering up how friggin' racist it was. That you couldn't see that.
Well,
when you were viewing, you were like, "Oh wow, look at it! Just looks beautiful," and I can't see any like the pro Southern.
No,
anyway,
it's
we know Gone with the Wind has perhaps not aged as well as The Wizard of Oz. You can still look at Gone with the Wind for its cinematic accomplishments.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So Gone with the Wind.
It's not as fun to watch.
Yeah. It won for cinematography, film editing, actress in a supporting role for Hattie McDaniel, art direction, outstanding production, writing, what's called a special award, directing, and actress. And special effects. The winner was The Rains Came. I misspoke. Nominees were Gone with the Wind, Only Angels Have Wings, Private Lives of Elizabeth and Essex, Topper Takes a Trip, Union Pacific, and The Wizard of Oz. The Rains Came.
I guess they did. They must have been impressive because it won best special effects.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to watch it. It's not one that I've ever seen before. It's directed by Clarence Brown. It seems like a very straightforward type of
What state
film.
does it take place in?
Oh, that's a good question. Fictional town. Oh, it's in India. Ranchapur, India, which is a fictional town in India. So anyway, but Wizard of Oz, I mean, still just like losing special effects Academy Award is surprising because this movie is, and hey, this is something that I can cover on Statue of Limitations, my hopefully sometime to be produced podcast that reexamines the Academy Awards, which, mostly relitigating based on discrimination, but also talking about hindsight when you look at movies like this. And
The Rains Came would be a good one to talk about on that. Tyrone Power plays
absolutely. There's
a handsome Indian
brown
doctor.
face. Yeah. Absolutely. So anyway, I don't know. I think that clearly the visual effects absolutely stunning. I really was fascinated by them, and also it's like even the ones that are a little bit kitschier, it's like I love that they did that. They had to come up with how to do that.
And what was the precedent for so much of it? When you think about it, like the hokey ones, I think I was thinking to myself like, all right, yeah, but that's through my lens now. Growing up in the 80s, the age of special effects blockbusters.
Yeah.
So just thinking like, okay, well, between what came between A Trip to the Moon and The Wizard of Oz? Like, where's the bar set for visual effects, and just how high is this going over it?
Well, also during this time, cinematically speaking, there was a bit of hesitation to kind of, I mean, A Trip to the Moon is an awesome example of like, not just early days of cinema, but early days of thinking like, what can we do with this medium? But a lot of other films up until this point were kind of a little afraid to take a leap into too much of a fantasy type of setting, or, really shocking audiences, because there's still, we're still within the first half century of of movie making.
Yeah.
And it's like and especially because TV it at this point isn't even around, it's like everything still is very novel.
Sound is still relatively
It's still
new.
relatively new, and so for them to take leaps and demonstrate things that are so far out would be really difficult for some movie viewers. And that's why the movie The Wizard of Oz veered away from the source material and made it be that she was dreaming the whole thing. Whereas in the novel, the Land of Oz is a very real place. And in other adaptations, they go there with it. I believe that even in was it 1925, like the original Wizard of Oz film, the like silent one, like it still takes place in the land, like the Land of Oz is a very real thing. I think you can watch all of that one on YouTube. I haven't had the opportunity to check it out though. But
No, neither have I.
I think that they also, tried to. I know that a lot of the other iterations of like Oz films that have come out have claimed to not be like so much sequels to this film. Although I think that Journey Back to Oz, which is an animated one, is actually supposed to be a sequel. But I think that they like retcon a little bit to be like, oh no, it is real. Now the world is ready for us to understand that this place is real. And then of course, like Return to Oz is a, adaptation of source material.
Yeah, two of the books, Ozma of Oz, or wait, is it Ozma of Oz? So Return to Oz is, it's based on two of the books. One of the books doesn't even have Dorothy in it. And so Return to Oz, I remember seeing, I may have seen Return to Oz in the theater. I don't remember.
It's freaky deaky.
I don't know. It would explain a lot. I have very early memories of Return to Oz, but I remember I also had the novelization.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I was big into movie novelizations. Yeah. So it is, right. It's based on mainly Ozma of Oz, but it really departs from, other than, I would say, like the look of Dorothy, played by Firuza Balk.
Right.
Which it always confused me that there was a Firuza Balk and a character named Veruca Salt, and the person Firuza Balk looked like the actress who played Veruca Salt, but wasn't.
Yeah.
I've only just figured that out recently.
I've never thought about Veruca Salt looking like Firuza Balk, but now that you say it, I see what you mean.
It plays into the whole idea that Firuza Balk herself is a mysterious character.
Absolutely.
Who could perhaps have played Veruca Salt in the 1971 Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Oz. So Return to Oz. Return to Oz is, wow. Return to Oz. I was really wondering, like, all right, I haven't seen this since I was a kid. By the way, Return to Oz was one of the first DVDs that I owned.
Really?
And I think I watched it maybe once.
Oh.
Maybe. Yeah. But watching it again recently, wow, there's
Yeah.
so much. Like, Disney went hard in the 80s. All right. We're gonna leave it at that. We're gonna come back to it
Yeah.
later. But Disney went hard in the 80s. So it's messed up. And it goes the Exorcist 2 route, which I don't know how consistent this aspect is with the novels, but the premise of Return to Oz is that Aunt Em, like, it's 6 months after the tornado and Dorothy can't sleep.
Oh,
and
yeah.
she swears that like Oz is real, and she keeps talking about it. And meanwhile, they see an ad in the newspaper for electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
And they take her to like just the creepiest institution where she has to stay overnight. And this is an aspect that they incorporate, an aspect of the 1939, the movie Wizard of Oz, because I don't believe this is part of the books, that the people in Oz are the people in her life.
Uh-huh.
But they're different versions, like how the ranch hands are the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Lion,
Yeah.
and the Miss Gulch is the Wicked Witch. So in this, you have the Doctor, who's played by Nicole Williamson, Merlin from Excalibur,
Okay.
who also, by the way, is in Exorcist 3.
Okay.
Right. But no, this one's much more like Exorcist 2, where Reagan is going through all these like psychological experiments after being possessed, and this is where Dorothy goes for electroshock therapy, and in 1899 Kansas.
Yeah.
And
So-
the office is run by it's him and his assistant, who ends up being this queen who is queen or princess Mombi, who can switch her heads. She has a gallery of heads,
Right.
that she can.
So I watched about, I think what would be half of it, and I had to turn it off. I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. But
I didn't finish
Yeah.
it, but not for lack of wanting to. It was for lack
Yeah.
of time and consciousness.
Yeah, the thing that was confusing about it is that anybody who's watching it would certainly be thinking, this is meant to be a sequel. And then you watch it and it's like, why is Dorothy like 7 years younger than she was in the first one? And the characters look different, but also the, Return to Oz, like you said, it takes place just after the tornado. And so you are picking up where the 1939 Wizard of Oz leaves off, but I don't know. It's like it's not clear that it's not supposed to be that same like that same storyline exactly. So
right, and and if it's 1985 and you're going into this movie, like, and especially like you're taking kids, it comes out in June 1985.
Yeah,
and also produced by Paul Maslansky, who also produced the Police Academy films.
Oh, there you go. So
that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, and so I think that, like we were saying before, the original Wizard of Oz is this movie that certainly was a significant film for the baby boomer generation. And the next generation is really those who would be watching Return to Oz in 1985. That's like the age
Gen
group
X.
it's Gen X or your geriatric millennials like myself. And and it's kind of like, why would they think that it's anything but a sequel to that original version? Yeah.
Right.
However,
and you can't market it. I mean, the poster says it's an all new live action fantasy, but it's like you can't market it as, hey, it's not a sequel. It's true to the books.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose like in hindsight being 2020, you could go the Bram Stoker's Dracula route and call it Frank L. Baum's Return to Oz. But even then, yes.
Yeah.
That big problem.
Yeah, they borked that one a little bit, but I think that it has become its own like cult classic, and looked at in ways differently than people look at the Wizard of Oz. However, the 1972 Journey Back to Oz, the animated one, which Liza Minnelli is the voice of Dorothy. Margaret Hamilton is actually the voice of Auntie M in this one. Paul Lynde is a voice in it. I think he's the Scarecrow. He's one of those characters.
The lion?
Oh, no. I think that actually he is he actually a character from Return to Oz, Jack.
He's Jack Pumpkinhead?
I think he's Jack Pumpkinhead.
Which Jack Pumpkinhead, by the way, Tim Burton has acknowledged is the inspiration for Jack Skellington.
Right. Yeah.
So it's no coincidence. Also, I think Tim Burton was working for Disney. Or no, he wasn't working for Disney at this point, but he had been working for Disney like the year before, because this comes out right before Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah, he was doing like The Fox and the Hound and
1985 kids movies, man, were
oh, absolutely wild. Yeah, Journey Back to Oz, loosely based on the second Oz novel, The Marvelous Land of Oz. Not a hit in theaters, but did well on television. Filmation produced live action segments with a celebrity playing the wizard, flying in his balloon with a parrot and two munchkins, Sprig and Twig. The first version featured Bill Cosby. Filmation only contracted with Cosby for 2 airings. So I guess that was very specific to the television. And then the rest of them were with Milton Berle. Interesting. I guess the Cosby one would eventually air in syndication. Interesting. Yeah. So let me go down to cast really quick because I got to get down to this. Yeah. Paul Lynde as Jack Pumpkinhead, Milton Berle as the Cowardly Lion, Danny Thomas as the Tin Man, or the Tin Woodman, as it says here, Mickey Rooney as the Scarecrow. And, of course, these are all voices. It's not
right.
them live action style. Liza Minnelli, though, as Dorothy, which is kind of like of course.
But and having Mickey Rooney, that's also a nice little Judy Garland connection there.
Totally.
Man, this was 1972?
72, yeah.
Well, Liza Minnelli's going to win an Oscar for Cabaret within months.
What a year. What a year for Liza with a Z.
Liza with a Z.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So
before we move on, I need to comment one more thing about Return to Oz and and how messed up it is, especially in the casting. So Piper Laurie as Aunt M, deciding to take who's not the stern but loving Aunt M of the Wizard of Oz. She's much closer to the Piper Laurie character in Carrie.
I'd say Carrie, Twin Peaks.
We should question Piper Laurie's parenting skills in films.
100%.
Her decisions are not in the best interests of children.
Love Piper Laurie.
She will get those blinds running. Oh no, that's not Piper Laurie's character. I was about to make it. I was making a Twin Peaks reference, but I just, as I was saying it, I was like, that is not Piper Laurie.
That's not her character.
Actress.
No, that's Nadine.
No, yeah.
So, all right. So we've got...
I'm upset with myself now.
So we have, the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, comes out in 1900. The first version of the film comes out in 1925, the silent version. Then, of course, we have this one in 39. We've got the 1972 animated one that we talked about. The Wiz is, 1978. There's the stage performances of it. We have Return to Oz in 85. There's like a Muppets version of The Wizard of Oz in 2005. There's the 2013 Oz the Great and Powerful. It's perfect. It's great. Right? Everybody loves Oz the Great and Powerful.
Everybody, right. Well, actually, so I really wanted to watch it because, and I'm sorry, I should say that as I was preparing for this podcast, I really wanted to watch it. Not up until this point.
Right.
Did I really want to watch it? But I was thinking about it, and the fact that Sam Raimi directed it made me think.
I know.
And I was looking at the cast list. I'm like, I do really like Rachel Weisz and Michelle Williams,
Totally,
and
yeah.
Mila Kunis, and I like that casting. But yeah, and along those similarly, because then we have the offshoots that are like more of the fan fiction-y.
Oh, there's so many.
Oz the Great and Powerful falls under that category.
Yeah.
But like most prominently for 20 years on Broadway, and now next year in cinemas, Wicked. And actually
100%.
starting in 1995 with Gregory Maguire's novel, and he wrote a whole series of these books about Oz and these spin-offs that I think, you know, it's like the idea starts as like a fan fiction type deal, but they really they really create all of these stories. Gregory Maguire was really, you know, nailing this whole like spin-off thing and how to revive old, you know, properties. So Wicked.
Have you seen Wicked? I haven't seen it.
I have not seen Wicked. Now, I have heard the music because my 9-year-old daughter saw Wicked on Broadway this past fall, and of course, she has listened to the song. Not all of them, but there's certain songs that we've heard a lot of,
Right.
and it has never been top of my list. I've heard the songs and yes, they sound very good, and I'm sure I would really enjoy them in the theater, but like listening to the recording of it doesn't do it for me.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it creates a fun and interesting backstory that leads up, you know, I don't know if it exactly, you know, Rogue Ones to Wizard of Oz, but
I know that for, you know, fans of Wizard of Oz and fans of theater, you know, Wicked certainly is a, you know, a huge, I don't know, production that's come about in the past. I think 20 years ago is when it debuted, 2003.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you know, and it really it brought us the wickedly talented Adele Dazeem. And
correction. Rent brought us the wickedly talented.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But
it did.
But the phrase "wickedly
Kristen
talented." Kristen Chenoweth.
Yeah. Wickedly talented. Yes.
Yeah.
Kristen Chenoweth. I don't know. I can't think of anything that she was in prior to Wicked. I'm sure there were things, but the wonderful Kristen Chenoweth was.
Yeah.
Yep. In Wicked, and the movie's coming out, and that's going to be, was it Ariana
Grande and Cynthia Erivo or Erivo.
Yes.
I don't know who that is. I am looking forward to finding out though when the film comes out. Let me see.
November 2024.
Musician, you know, just vocalist. Oh, okay. So in a lot of stage stuff. Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I was like, I know I've heard of her.
Tony Award winner, Color Purple. Yes. Yeah, I think that the Color Purple was a big one for her.
Oh, and Jeff Goldblum plays the wizard.
I saw that. That makes sense. Absolutely appropriate. And also, I did see on Wikipedia that in February of 2021, it says New Line Cinema, Temple Hill Entertainment, and Wicked producer Mark Platt announced a new version of the original book is in the works with Watchmen's Nicole. Wait, is that the same thing?
Is that the new Wizard of Oz?
There's a modern... Okay. So, yeah, this is saying that they are slated to direct a reimagining of The Wizard of Oz, which will have the option to include elements from the 1939 film. In August 2022, it was announced that Kenya Barris would write and direct a modern remake. So Kenya Barris was involved with the recent White Men Can't Jump, was the writer on that, was the writer, director, and producer of the film You People, the one that was with Jonah Hill and Eddie Murphy, Cheaper by the Dozen, Coming to America, the 2021 with the number 2. was involved with the movie Soul, which I loved. The remake of Witches, wrote that. Wrote the 2019 Shaft, Girls Trip, Barbershop The Next Cut, wrote and produced that one. And has also been very active with television on shows like Blackish, Grownish, Mixed-ish, Black AF, Are We There Yet, Soul Food.
So it looks like there are actually going to be 2 new Wizard of Oz movies.
Well, do you mean Wicked?
No, because I'm also looking at, it says, I'm looking at this piece on movieweb.com,
Okay.
and this is from earlier this year, that it was that Nicole Kassell, who was
Right.
involved in Watchmen, was going to be directing a remake of The Wizard of Oz, but then that Kenya Barris was doing a different version.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, Kenya Barris is doing a modern remake, and Nicole Kassell is doing a reimagining. I guess we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, but Dan, let's say your name was on that list. What would you do?
Oh, what would I do? Oh boy, I would probably be a disappointment to them because I don't. You mean like what would I do if I had to do a reimagining of Wizard of Oz?
If you could do
if it was just
anything
do
with all of
anything?
this, maybe it's just
Yeah.
mastering the VHS tape of your 1991 performance and releasing that
IMAX.
on the big screen. Yeah.
IMAX. Yeah. All right. So I've got a few. I was really trying to think about, because it's like, what stories haven't been told? And by the way, I also want to reference, in thinking about the what stories haven't been told, because also, as our listeners would know, oftentimes our ideas are more about the productions of the film. And there was a movie made, 1981's was it Under the Rainbow, Over the Rainbow, with Carrie Fisher and Chevy Chase.
Oh,
Yes, Under the Rainbow. It was about the casting of the Munchkins.
Yes.
The contracting of the Munchkins, and Billy Barty, who was one of the original Munchkins, is in it. Which is interesting because Billy Barty was also in Willow, which also starred Jean Marsh, who is the Princess Mobley in Return to Oz.
And Billy
Neither
Barty
here nor
was
there at the
also in Masters of the Universe, which rules, and also UHF, which rules.
Absolutely
Yeah.
rules. I heard
Noodles Macintosh.
In Return to Oz, by the way, speaking of that connection, it involves like this, there's a magical key, and there is a line where someone shouts, "The key, the key,
The key." Wonderful.
It might be the talking rooster. All right, I had a few ideas, and they go in many different directions. So first of all, I'm kind of curious. I want to know who was making the decisions at Disney in the 1980s, especially like working with Henson on these like really dark movies like Return to Oz and Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal. And who was it who was like, how about Disney goes dark? Like, I'm curious about that. So I would be interested to see that. I would be curious to see and then there's just, so thinking about the stories, a lot of it for me came down to Dorothy. So,
Okay.
All right, we see what happened. All right, so we've got 6 months later, Dorothy, the electroshock therapy. But what about Dorothy when she's like in her 30s, like, how really, like, what are the long-term impacts, especially if we're taking this as it's the Dorothy Gale of 1939's Wizard of Oz, where Oz is not a real place. Like, do we is it like Tim Robbins and Jacob's Ladder, where she's just seeing things, places?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know like what happens. I would love to see, like, I don't know. I feel like Todd Haynes would be a wonderful director for this like character study of. I also watched May December recently and just was like,
so good,
man. Like Todd Haynes is just like and is so versatile because I also saw his Velvet Underground documentary earlier this year.
Nice.
But a movie about like how Dorothy is getting by in her 30s. Of course, many filmmakers, but I thought about Todd Haynes, and like she's like it takes place in the 20s. Maybe it's like during Prohibition, and of course she's like hardcore alcoholic. I mean, of course, then it gets dark because Judy Garland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had another idea. Now, one of the stories that one of the questions that's remained unanswered to me is how Dorothy ended up living with her. Is it her great aunt and uncle? Because they do seem a bit old. Is it just her aunt and uncle? What happened with Dorothy's parents?
That's a great question.
I think in Oz the Great and Powerful, there's some like little like Easter egg dropped about it, but I'm like, that's not enough for me. So what happened to Dorothy's parents, and maybe how does that plant the seeds for her later, the blurring of reality and fantasy? So I'm really into the psychology of Dorothy here.
Well, also it raises a lot of questions about her identity and where she fits in the world. And she lives in Kansas in on a remote farm somewhere where the only people that we see that she lives near are this like weird sorcerer dude who's, I guess, just like passing through town, and this lady that fucking hates her and wants to kill her dog. Like, that's not an existence, but it's all she knows. And for her, it's just like, well, what? I'm going to like inherit this farm one day? Is that my life? Like, what's going to happen with me? And there's a lot to explore there.
Well, and the life that she wants is this somewhere over the rainbow, and it's this
sure,
right, but it's so disconnected from reality.
What this 1939 version of the movie, and I don't want to say that the books are the same because I don't know, I haven't read them. What it's trying to tell us is, don't try and be something that you're not. Don't try and dream and accomplish something, because it's just not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be here. Look, you're going to go off. You're going to do something. You're going to miss the shit out of us. You're going to be so happy to see us when you come back.
Wow. And now tying this all together with the social values and norms that really developed in the 1950s, alongside The Wizard of Oz being shown on television starting in 1956, and so many children eating this up and then conforming to rigid social standards. Ew. And being afraid to break out and be different, just like Julianne Moore and Todd Haynes' 2002 Far From Heaven.
Exactly. Filmed in our hometown.
Or Julianne Moore in December.
Yeah. Pick your Julianne Moore.
Forbidden romance movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, John, those are, and I was thinking about it, and if you start to ask questions about like, all right, well, where did this person come from? And the Land of Oz does have a lot that, like, we have been given a lot by the movie and the books that hasn't been explored.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what are you thinking, John? What's your take? Where's your yellow brick road leading?
Let's imagine that there aren't these new reimaginings and whatever else that's coming out. And, if I was kind of put in charge of like doing something with it, yes, take a look at the series of books, the original books, and, create something from scratch with those. But it's, you want to do it in a way that's not going to make the boomers feel like their version of this movie is not perfect. So there are ways that you have to kind of like approach it to make sure that it doesn't make it seem like the original is broken or that somebody's childhood would be ruined, so to speak. But what I think that is important to do is to really pay homage to the vision of this movie that really broke so much ground and that really transported people into a fantastic world. And I don't think that I could think of a more appropriate director to handle something like this than and of course this is a very hot name to say right now, but Yorgos Lanthimos. And for anybody who has seen Poor Things, you would know, holy crap, the way that this director really brings you into an entirely new world, and it shows you the world through the eyes of somebody who's experiencing things for the first time and is filled with wonder. And there are a lot of things that happen in Poor Things visually that really do feel like you're, being dropped into Oz. And that's somebody who I would also trust to, I don't know, think about things differently and in a fresh way that isn't just pandering to an audience, but also who wants to bring something fresh to people who would be responsive to that. Yeah. And anybody who's seen also The Favorite knows that, that's possible too. I haven't seen Killing of the Sacred Deer. It's on my short list, especially after having seen Saltburn with Barry Keoghan. I know that he is supposed to be amazing in Killing of Sacred Deer. The Lobster is another way that he introduces you to just a completely different way that the world can work. And that's what The Wizard of Oz is all about.
Wow. And what I like about that idea is as you were building up to the idea, I was thinking about it. How do you get your audience to separate it? And something that I think is maybe a little bit more in vogue now. I mean, it kind of comes and goes, but the association of a filmmaker with a film, like a Yorgos Lanthimos, am I pronouncing it?
I believe so. Yeah.
At this point now, he's got a body of work that really, even though his films, and I've only seen The Lobster and The Favorite, but they're distinct from each other, yet he still carries this ability, right, to immerse you into a new world and show you that world through the eyes of his characters. And I also, especially in thinking of this, I think of Guillermo del Toro, because I think about Pinocchio as being a great example of a way to separate it from the previous versions and make you and let you know from the get-go that you're not experiencing that, you're experiencing this.
Pinocchio is an interesting example because I feel like most people are associating the character of Pinocchio with the Disney version, and there have been so many versions of Pinocchio dating even way before then. And even in the same year, last year, that Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio came out, there was that other Tom Hanks one, and there's always new Pinocchios coming out.
Roberto Benigni has done 2.
Did he do 2? I knew he did 1.
Well, because there was the one that was his follow up to Life is Beautiful.
Yeah, that was
and then
weird.
There was another, but there was another recent one, past few years, where he played Geppetto.
Weird. Yeah, so
I will forever love Roberto Benigni for walking his crazy antics at the awards shows that year.
Yeah.
So,
Looney dude.
But yeah, no, I think he would be a really, God, how would he cast Emma Stone?
However the fuck he wants. He knows how to use her.
I know, I'm thinking, I was she's too old for Dorothy, but I'm oh God, he'd find a way. I haven't seen Poor Things, but it looks it feels like he's kind of found a muse in.
Well, I mean, this is just two movies that they've done together.
But her performance in The Favorite is so good, and
very
like I said,
good.
I haven't seen Poor Things, but
Olivia
this really
Colman
sounds
in The Favorite is so good. Rachel Weisz in The Favorite is so good.
Wonderful. So also again, you have a director who does work particularly well and does really direct women in strong performances
totally
really well, much like Todd Haynes.
Also, in Poor Things, he cast people like Gerard Carmichael and Rami Youssef, who are not known for doing the types of work that this movie has them in, and it utilizes them so well. I loved Gerard Carmichael and Rami Youssef in them. I mean, Mark Ruffalo, you're always going to get something amazing out of him, and Willem Dafoe is always going to be perfect, especially if you have him playing a giant weirdo. And so I don't know. I think that Yorgos Lanthimos just like really knows how to utilize his talent and find the right people to fill out these worlds a little bit.
I would be very interested to see his take on Wizard of Oz.
Well, Dan, before we wrap up, there's a few things and a few other notes that I took that I just wanted to mention. Some observations that I had about the 1939 Wizard of Oz. So, first of all, the crew goes and they meet the wizard. This is the second time when he gives them all of their stuff and everything. And when he's giving the scarecrow a diploma to indicate that he is smart or whatever, he's just got like a bunch of diplomas around. Is he a counterfeiter? I mean, I imagine he's got time on his hands. There's not a lot of people coming to visit him. Also, Margaret Hamilton, and this is something that you wouldn't have probably noticed in like the VHS versions, but watching remastered versions, and I don't think that they did anything to this, but it's like, she had great skin. She had like really smooth, beautiful skin. And it's like, yeah, she wasn't like an old lady at the time. She went on to have like a very full career. You know, she certainly leaned into her performance as the Wicked Witch a couple times. Famously on Mr. Rogers, which was a really cool moment where she, got into and out of costume. So one other observation that I had. All right, Dan. Crashing a hot air balloon into a village filled with little people, flying monkeys, and just general weirdos, and being given the job of Wizard Supreme is the definition of white male privilege. He got there by being bad at flying a hot air balloon, which I don't know if you can even be good at flying a hot air balloon, but dude gets there by accident. They're just like, all right, well, I guess you're Wizard Supreme now.
So wait, he's basically a snake oil salesman, a con artist.
Totally. We know this.
Convinces a bunch of people that they need him to provide everything for them. Yeah.
I don't even know if he had to do much convincing. He tells the story about how he crashed his hot air balloon and they named him Wizard Supreme.
Like, I guess he had a hot air balloon, right? And they have flying monkeys and they have they have a whole lot of other crazy stuff.
They got a lady.
Hot air balloons are just beyond them.
They got a lady who rides on a broomstick and writes stuff in the air.
They got a lady who can switch her heads. She can just switch her. I mean,
if we're going into the 85, yeah. Anyway,
and one other thing also before we do move on, and this is I'm not on a serious note, but because of course we're covering this movie because it especially the 1939 version arguably entirely takes place in Kansas, inside the head of a little girl lying in a bed unconscious somewhere in the plains of Kansas, and I get the sense though that like Return to Oz, and I neglected to check the filming locations.
Okay.
Wizard of Oz definitely gives you a sense of the Kansas, but it also doesn't look like a lot of it looks backlotty.
Oh yeah.
I get the feeling like some of this like exteriors in the Kansas sequences in Return to Oz, it definitely gives you the sense of Kansas. I have also been listening to the audiobook of In Cold Blood.
Oh.
Also set in Kansas.
Happened in Kansas.
but hearing the descriptions of just like kind of just flat land, just like flat, like cornfields,
Right.
fields and fields. And Return to Oz, there are some shots in it that definitely give you that sense of just a lot of the remoteness, especially turn of the century Kansas, but even mid-century Kansas, as we find out in Cold Blood.
Well, Return to Oz was filmed in the UK, I think entirely. Yeah, at Elstree Studios. But they must have gone and visited Kansas enough times to make sure to capture the feel of it.
No, I'd feel like an idiot for not checking that out first, but whatever. It feels desolate and remote, and yeah.
Well,
all right, let's talk about what we're doing next.
Yeah, because we're leaving Kansas. We're going to go to Kentucky. What are we going to do in Kentucky,
Yes.
Dan?
All right, in Kentucky, oh boy, we are going to investigate some mysteries with the one and only Sheba Baby.
Yes.
It's Pam Grier in 1975's Sheba Baby, directed by William Girdler.
I'm excited.
I couldn't tell you anything else he directed, but always excited to check out some Pam Grier.
Hell yeah.
On cinema, especially some prime 1970s Pam Grier.
Absolutely.
I'm a big fan of Jackie Brown. So, and of course, inspired by, among other movies, Sheba Baby.
Yeah.
So I've never seen it before. Have you seen Sheba Baby before?
This one I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of her other work. Coffee, she's fantastic.
Yeah.
And she's the best.
Foxy Brown.
Brown.
Mars Attacks.
Then Mars Attacks. That's right. So Dan, I'm looking forward to having a chat with you about Sheba Baby. And if anybody has any thoughts about potential future legacies for Sheba Baby or The Wizard of Oz or any of the other movies we've talked about before on this podcast, email us ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. Check out the link in this description for our link tree. And we'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us. Check out our videos on TikTok and Instagram. And yeah, we're just happy to be doing this. It's really fun to be doing this alphabetically ordered journey through the United States. And I can't believe that we're sticking with it. But I'm glad we are.
Oh, of course we are seeing this thing through.
Absolutely. And also if you are perhaps from or have lived in any of the states past Kansas or Kentucky and want to suggest something for us, please email us. Again, that's ruinedchildhoodspod@gmail.com.
And that includes Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico.
It certainly does. Absolutely.
Because we're coming there too.
Well, Dan, as you are stolen from a mean lady who's trying to kill you and you're jumping out of her basket, I wish you a good journey.
As I'm crashing my hot air balloon into the land of Oz, good journey.